So we all know about Five Nights at Freddy's, right? I've made a good few videos on the series because I'm a virgin, because I'm very passionate about the series and enjoy the funny animatronic jump scares. Yeah. But another aspect of the series that I and many others enjoy has got to be the lore. The series has been criticized to death about how weird and convoluted the story is, which is kind of true, but at the same time, the series is about dead children possessing animatronics, so you kind of have to suspend your disbelief. But one of the most memorable aspects of the story has got to be the main antagonist himself, William Afton, aka Springtrap. He made his first appearance all the way back in FNAF 2, where he was only known as the Purple Guy, and all we really knew about him at first was that he murdered some kids and stuffed their dead bodies into the animatronics. As the series went on, he slowly got more and more development. We find out that he is the body inside of Springtrap, who is the main antagonist in FNAF 3. And we even get to learn about his family, like the crying child, Michael Afton, who is said to be the main character in almost every game, and Elizabeth, who was later revealed to possess the baby animatronic. However, in FNAF Pizzeria Simulator, he finally met his demise when his former work partner Henry Emily burns him and all the other animatronics down to the ground, and thus ending the Afton legacy. But then Help Wanted came out, and he appeared to come back as this computer virus known as Glitchtrap. Bit strange considering FNAF 6 was all about killing him for good, but this could be interesting. Then Security Breach came out, and he out of nowhere came back in his new form known as Burntrap, and then immediately dies. Again. The way games like Help Wanted and especially Security Breach handled William Afton was extremely poor. Like, why would you keep killing him then suddenly bringing him back without any explanation? I do think the idea of bringing him back in Security Breach could have been kind of interesting. There seems to have been a lot of cooked content that involved his character, and I wish they expanded more on him. But whatever, Security Breach came out, it was shit, and a few months later Steel will announce a free DLC called Ruin, set to release in 2023. Now this got me intrigued since it felt like this DLC could redeem what made Security Breach so bad, and it could even give William Afton a proper conclusion, or they could just completely ignore the Afton ending. A full year would go by and we would hear nothing about this new DLC, but another part of FNAF media that was releasing around this time were the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, which I don't really know much about honestly other than that they take place within the game universe. But in the 6th book called Nexi, and in the 3rd story, we hear about a character called the Mimic. Now, the Mimic story is very interesting to say the least. It's about an engineer named Edwin Murray who was hired by Fazbear Entertainment to create new robots for them. Since he's super busy with his work, he creates a robot called the Mimic to entertain his son. Now, the Mimic is designed to study people's behavior and mimic it, hence the name Mimic. Now later on in the story, Edwin's son sadly dies in an accident, and because of grief, Edwin destroys the Mimic robot with all his rage and agony. The Mimic however comes back, and the last thing I saw was Edwin's rage and anger. So later in the story, when workers from Fazbear Entertainment go to the workshop to inspect what happened with Edwin, the robot mimics Edwin's rage and anger onto the workers and kills them all. Pretty gruesome, I won't lie. At the time this story came out, I was definitely intrigued with the character. It was a cool concept that could lead to some great stories. But then the FNAF community started to theorize that the Mimic was actually in the games the whole time, and that Burntrap wasn't William Afton, but instead was the Mimic. Now I'll be honest, I didn't really know what to make of this theory. On one hand, it kind of makes sense, but I don't know, it just seemed a bit silly to me. But then on July 25th, the Ruin DLC released. And spoilers in case you haven't played the DLC yet, but in the game we play as a girl named Cassie, who hears Gregory calling her for help. Near the end of the game, we eventually find what we think is Gregory, but it's revealed to be none other than the Mimic.
You're not Gregory. What are you?
I'm Gregory.
I'll be honest, I was a tiny bit disappointed with this ending, mainly because I really wanted to see William Afton have a proper conclusion. Plus, the story in Ruin felt fairly weak with a lack of characters like Vanessa, Gregory, and Burntrap. But the more I thought about the Mimic, the more invested I got. Like, first of all, I absolutely adore his design. The part where you're running away from the Mimic was genuinely terrifying and super intense. Plus, I love how they set him up in the game. The reveal that this giant endoskeleton was mimicking Gregory the whole time is just such a scary concept. Plus, now that the Mimic is confirmed to be in the games, it helps explain a lot of things. Burntrap could have been a mix of Afton's soul and the Mimic's soul, which creates the Burntrap suit. And the whole Vanny and Vanessa thing can easily be explained as the Mimic corrupting Vanessa, and not William Afton. And thanks to Ruin, we know that the canon ending isn't the Afton ending, but rather the Princess Quest ending. So Ruin really does clear up a lot of questions we initially had. Now granted, you could say that they only created the Mimic to explain the mess that was Security Breach. Like, I can just imagine in a panic they went to Scott asking what to do, and he's like, a robot that mimics other people's behavior. Yeah, do that. Or who knows, maybe they've been planning out the Mimic the whole time, which if so, I could definitely see the blueprints as to what would become the Mimic. But with all the cut content from Security Breach, they probably didn't have enough time to develop the concept any further. But now that the character got a slow build up in the books and a proper introduction in Ruin, what happens now? Well, I want to see Stillwell build on the character as much as possible. Not in the sense where they give it a family or something like that, but just show how dangerous and threatening it can be. I feel like we just got a glimpse as to what the Mimic is capable of. What if in future installments it can multiply itself? That way there are multiple Mimics running around the place. Plus, they hinted at this idea of a William Afton cult where Vanessa looks up to William, but why not have the Mimic involved in that? Why not have him copy what Afton does, except have it be a lot more violent? But then again, this does bring up a good question. Could the Mimic surpass William Afton? Well, William Afton was an awesome antagonist, there's no doubting that, but they can't just keep bringing him back over and over again. He honestly peaked in FNAF 3, and I think we should just leave him dead. The Mimic has the potential to be a terrifying yet great antagonist. Hell, I would like to hear more of its backstory in the future. Maybe learn about Edwin Murray and understand how he felt about the Mimic. I hear people theorize that Edwin Murray could be an alias for Henry Emily, but I don't know, that's getting a bit out there for me. But this new story of the Mimic has great potential. Plus, later on in the year we have Help Wanted 2 releasing for VR. Now, the first Help Wanted game introduced a ton of new lore elements into the series, as well as some terrifying gameplay mechanics. And it's looking like this Help Wanted game will be based on Sister Location, and maybe Pizzeria Simulator. And who knows, maybe they can sneak in the Mimic similar to how they snuck Glitchtrap into the first game. I'm not entirely sure as to how they would include the Mimic in Help Wanted 2, but who knows. There will definitely be mentions of William Afton and Michael Afton in the game since those games really focus on the Afton family, but like I said, we just have to wait and see what they do. Maybe the Mimic can be this glooming threat that is constantly haunting over the players, kinda similar to Glitchtrap. Anyway, that's all I really have to say about the Mimic. I know this is a smaller video than usual, but I really wanted to talk about the Mimic. I'm really invested with the new direction the FNAF series is taking, and how surprisingly amazing Ruin was. Maybe things are finally looking good for the series. Let's just hope Stillwell takes their time with making these games, and can actually develop the Mimic into a really great antagonist. The Mimic shows us that we are in a new era of FNAF, and I personally cannot wait to see what they do with this amazing concept. Anyway, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye.